I think some people would say, well, a kid is not prepared to make these decisions about themselves. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate, so and others would say, why should my kid learn about these things in third grade? But that's not what's really going on, is it?
No. So, I mean, I could sit here and spout off, actually, probably Dr. Joe, you could do it better about, the fact that children actually have a very developmentally appropriate understanding of gender and what that means broadly and for themselves as young as 3.
Yeah.
Right. So I could sit here and talk about, actually, it's very developmentally appropriate to talk about these things. I could talk about the fact that kids are going to think about these things, they're going to learn about these things, and pretending it doesn't exist does them no favors. Instead, what I'm going to really say is, I think these kinds of laws focus so much on what about, my kids, that people seem to think absolutely must not be those kids.
Mm,
And how, you're brainwashing my kids and you're making them think these horrible things. And aside from the part where that's very, I'm trying really hard to think of a nice way to say it, but aside from how horrible that is, what about the kids who are genuinely going through this,
right.
who, whether or not you believe them, this is real for them. And all we're doing with laws and movements like this is further making them hide, making them feel ashamed, making them feel unsafe at their own expense. It's not helping anyone else, and it's only harming.
Yeah, because it sends a message, right, that you're not allowed to talk about these things.
Hmm.
That somehow it's shameful. That somehow
Right.
you're wrong. Somehow you're less than. Somehow you're broken.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just curious, did that ever happen to you as you were growing up?
So it's interesting because I I think some trans and non-binary folks can look back and sort of see, like, oh, yeah, I definitely have always been whatever this gender is, but I just didn't have the language for it, or I wasn't allowed to be.
Mm,
Um, I don't know that that's my experience in the same way. I don't know that I was uncomfortable with my assigned gender growing up, with the exception of just, growing up raised by a feminist mom and really chafing at the idea of there's restrictions on what anyone can do. But um, I don't look back and think, like, people, adults stifled me or made me feel ashamed of who I was, because I just don't think I was thinking about it
mm,
then. And that same, the other side of that coin is that no one was talking about it at all. And so
mm,
maybe I could have been thinking about it then,
mm.
had it ever occurred to me, had I ever heard about non-binary people or genderqueer people, if I had language or information or models or examples, maybe I would have thought about
Hmm. And is that part of what's happening now, do you think, in our culture, in our youth, in our adults who have
it.
had to keep their secret for so long?
Hmm. I think in a lot of ways it is. I think, one thing that is different now is ease of access to information. I although I am on the younger end of things. I grew up in a time where I did not have the internet as it is right at my fingertips. I didn't have access to this information. Um, I could not have found information as readily and as easily as I think young people do today. And I know that that scares a lot of people. But I also think that's a beautiful thing, because I think that's what allows a lot of queer and trans folks to find themselves sooner, because they have more access to information. They are seeing more examples. They can find more community. And I don't think that they're being brainwashed. I think that that's them finding more opportunity and more support.
I'm curious about this part as well, because you say find more community, which is so important and appropriate. But doesn't that imply that they are separated from another community?
I mean, is any community ever actually separated from another community?
I don't think so. Like I said, I think that, this is part of the I am.
Yeah.
Right? Is we are one group. It's called humanity. We're one group. And yet we divide into these tribes, into these clusters where we have more familiarity with one than another. And then all of a sudden the other group is wrong, is not, and I think we started to talk about this earlier on, is not even human.
Right. I mean, it's interesting, and I think you're right, Dr. Joe. And it's interesting though that it so often does get framed this way of, well, if you're talking about community, then you're just trying to be better than us or trying to be separate from us, trying to make us feel less than, when in reality, queer and trans folks are seeking out community specifically because the broader community and society is telling us that we are less than.
Yes, that's right. And why is that? What, I mean, really, where does that one come from?
Fear.
I mean, it's been going on for millennia.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. We have to do something about it. We have to do something. And for me, the other part about this week that has been so powerful is that there is less silence, Tom. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this if people had not said this is wrong, even though, the particular governmental bodies have enough people to say we're going to push it through anyway. Other people say, no, there's something wrong. This is wrong. What's that like? Raimi, is that new?
That's a really interesting question. I think you're right that there is more a sort of broader general consensus that this is not okay, that this is wrong, that transphobia and homophobia are not okay. And I do think you're right that there is more momentum and more conversation than perhaps there would have been in the past. And I think, again, one of the challenges is, with visibility comes risk, right? And so there also would not have been as much mobilizing or pushback in the past, because we wouldn't have had to have those conversations in the past, because no one needed to pass these bills in the past, because no one was talking about these things in the past, right? So it's sort of, again, that balancing act of, the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, of visibility is so deeply important and is also really dangerous, right? And so, part of how I've found my role within LGBTQ community and activism in particular is doing things like this, because I also know that for myself as a white person, as a masculine of center person, I have a lot more safety in my own visibility than other members of my community. And so it feels really important to me to sort of broadcast these messages, to have these conversations, to put myself out there, because I know that the harm that might come to me from speaking out is not necessarily the same risk as, my loved ones who are members of this community and are also Black, Indigenous, or other people of color, who are visibly disabled people, who are experiencing additional layers of oppression. And so again, I feel like I've said a few things a few times, but this idea of that visibility and that bigger conversation is happening and it is important. And the people who tend to get the biggest blowback from that are the people who are already most on the margins and already most at risk.
Yeah. And this ties into Ukraine. Think of look at how many people are saying, well, if we didn't have pronouns, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Visibility can be a double-edged sword. And certainly, if you're visible, you're more vulnerable. But if you're visible, you also have more influence. And what's terrific about visibility is that at least 3 times during my show, during our show, during this show, we provide visibility to our sponsors so that they can have their voice, because they really do help us. We wouldn't be here without them. And that's part of really being a community, because it has to do with the diversity. We have to also have that visibility. So with that in mind, Larry, let's take a commercial break. Let's give our sponsors some visibility. We'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show.
Stretch the canvas, rush with madness.